After Jesus returned to heaven, the early church grew quickly.
The Apostle Paul traveled thousands of miles and started many new churches, upsetting both Jewish religious leaders and Roman authorities.
Which is where our story starts.
Take it away.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian. Our friend Paul told the story of Jesus everywhere he went, even when it got him in trouble. At last, a Roman commander had Paul arrested. When some men plotted to take Paul's life, the commander had Paul taken to the governor in Caesarea. Here, Paul was kept for 2 years. Finally, when unfair accusations were made about him before a new governor, Paul demanded,
I appeal to Caesar.
Now, Paul was a Roman citizen, and it was his right to get a fair trial before the ruling Caesar. But that meant an epic and dangerous trip all the way to Rome. Paul and several other prisoners were handed over to a centurion of the imperial regiment.
I am Julius. Hail Caesar!
So the men set sail, eventually making it to a harbor called Fair Havens. Paul warned Julius and the crew.
Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss of ship and cargo and to our own lives also.
The pilot and ship's owner disagreed.
This is a terrible place to spend the winter. We should sail on to the harbor at Phoenix.
Julius listened to the pilot and the ship's owner instead of Paul, and when a gentle south wind began to blow, they jumped at the chance to set sail once more.
Anchors away!
But within a short time, that soft breeze became a stiff wind, and finally whipped up to a hurricane-force gale. The ship was caught up by the waves and driven by the wind. After many days, the crew feared the ship would be torn apart and sink. They even threw cargo and the ship's tackle overboard to lighten the load.
We're doomed!
Even though everyone else had given up hope, Paul stood strong and continued to talk with God. At last, he addressed the crew and passengers.
You should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss.
Paul was not above a good "I told you so."
Keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Last night, an angel of God told me, do not be afraid, Paul. You must go on trial in front of Caesar. God has shown his grace by sparing the lives of all those sailing with you. I have faith in God that it will happen. However, we must run aground on an island.
That night, 14 days into the storm, the ship approached land. Fearing they would be dashed on the rocks, the sailors dropped the anchors. When daylight came, they decided to make for the shore, but the ship hit a sandbar. The ship began to break up.
If you can swim, jump overboard. Otherwise, grab what you can and hold on.
Everyone did as Julius commanded, and miraculously, all 276 people on board made it to shore alive. They discovered they had reached the island of Malta, where the islanders welcomed them with a roaring fire. As Paul tossed some brushwood on the fire, a snake bit his hand. The islanders were sure he would die, but Paul simply shook the snake off into the fire. When nothing happened to him, they decided he must be a god. There on Malta, Paul prayed for the chief official's father, and that man was healed of a fever. Through the help of God's Spirit, Paul healed other sick people on the island too, and the islanders gave Paul and his fellow passengers everything they needed. The end.
Arrest, prison, shipwreck, snake bite?
Ah, man, it's like Paul was just a magnet for terrible things to happen.
Yeah. In a letter to the church in Corinth, Paul even wrote down an epic list of all the awful things he had experienced, but through it all, Paul knew that God was right there with him to give him courage and strength.
So, what's our part in the story?
Well, you probably haven't been shipwrecked or bitten by a snake recently, at least let's hope not. But like Paul, you could probably make a list of all the bad things that have happened to you. Or things that you're facing right now.
Maybe a family member is really sick in the hospital.
Or maybe some kids in the neighborhood are being mean to you.
Maybe the pet your family has had since you were a baby just died.
Or you've got to get a cavity filled at the dentist.
Whatever happens, no matter how bad it is, you can have faith that God is right there with you.
Yep, God will never, ever leave you, no matter what. God always loves you and promises to give you the resilience to make it through.
When bad stuff happens, keep talking to God. Keep holding on.
And God may not make the bad situation go away, but God will walk with you right through the middle of it.
Yeah, I think you got it. See you next time.
Here's the thing. When bad things happen, God is with you.
I can't see the wind or find the end of a rainbow, but I can feel the breezes blow and see the colors glow in the sky. And I don't know why it's that way. I guess that I just need a little faith to believe in a better tomorrow, in the heavens above, in what seems impossible, in the power of love. And I believe in the touch of a friend, and I believe good will win, I believe.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Have a blessed day. See you next week.